What if the most dangerous weapon in the U.S. Army wasn't German armor, but its own most brilliant generals? George S. Patton moved like a force of nature: speed, fury, raw aggression. He dominated headlines, terrified enemies, and inspired troops with a ferocity few commanders could match. Wherever Patton went, battles seemed to bend in his favor. Omar Bradley was his opposite: quiet, methodical, disciplined. While Patton chased momentum, Bradley calculated consequences. While Patton courted glory, Bradley carried responsibility. One fought wars with instinct and audacity. The other fought them with restraint and control. And that was the problem. Patton could win battles, but left unchecked, he could also fracture alliances, ignite scandals, and derail strategy. Bradley's true mission was not simply defeating the enemy. It was managing Patton himself, channeling his brilliance, without letting it consume the war effort. So here is the impossible question: was Patton a military genius who needed absolute freedom, or a liability who required firm control? Omar Bradley and George Patton represented two completely different philosophies of war, and neither believed the other had it quite right. Bradley was known as the GI General. He stayed close to the common soldier, obsessed over supply lines, and measured success not by headlines, but by lives preserved. To Bradley, wars were won through logistics, discipline, and coalition unity. He believed that recklessness cost more than it gained, especially in a war fought alongside fragile allies. Patton saw war differently. He believed speed shattered enemies, fear paralyzed resistance, and hesitation killed momentum. His aggressive tactics and theatrical persona made him a symbol of American power. But behind the bravado, historians have noted a man deeply sensitive to criticism, driven by legacy, and constantly battling private insecurity. This divide has fueled decades of debate. Many supporters argue Bradley was too cautious, effective, but uninspiring. Others defend him as the steady hand who actually won wars. Patton's admirers praise his brilliance and battlefield instincts, while critics point to his recklessness, scandals, and political volatility as dangers that nearly ended his career. So here's the question historians still argue about, and now it's yours. Would you rather fight under Bradley's caution or Patton's aggression? Share your view in the comments and subscribe for more deep dives into the commanders who shaped history. Commanding George Patton was never just a matter of rank. For Omar Bradley, it meant carrying the burden of managing a legend without letting that legend destroy itself or the Allied cause. Behind the scenes, Bradley became more than a field commander. He was a handler. He monitored Patton's temper, softened his public statements, and repeatedly intervened when Patton pushed against orders or political boundaries. Every outburst, every controversial remark, risked undermining Allied unity and public support back home. That tension reached a breaking point with the infamous slapping incidents in Sicily. Patton's assault on hospitalized soldiers was a near-career-ending scandal. Publicly, the Army reprimanded him. Privately, the future of one of America's most effective generals hung in the balance. Bradley chose a careful path, supporting discipline, but also ensuring Patton was not discarded entirely. He believed Patton's battlefield value was too great to lose, yet too dangerous to unleash without restraint. Historians remain divided. Some argue Bradley protected Patton excessively, enabling behavior that should never have been tolerated. Others contend Patton should have been permanently sidelined, regardless of his military genius. So the question remains: should Bradley have saved Patton or removed him? After D-Day, the contrast between control and chaos became unmistakable. Omar Bradley bore responsibility for the bloodiest American landing zones, where progress came at a brutal cost. Every decision carried the weight of thousands of lives. While Bradley managed the slow, grinding reality of Normandy, George Patton was sidelined, restless, angry, and eager for action. To Patton, the delay felt like wasted opportunity. To Bradley, it was the price of survival. That balance shifted with Operation Cobra. When the breakout finally came, Bradley made a calculated decision. He unleashed Patton, but with limits. Patton was given room to move fast and strike hard, yet remained bound by a broader strategic framework. The result was explosive success. German lines collapsed, Allied momentum surged, and Patton's armored forces raced across France. For Bradley, Cobra validated his control-first philosophy. Patton's aggression worked best when carefully timed and constrained. Unchecked chaos had been avoided. Decisive victory had been achieved. Yet online and in popular memory today, Patton dominates the spotlight. His speed, speeches, and swagger make for compelling legend. Bradley, the architect who set the conditions for success, often fades into the background. So ask yourself, do we remember Patton because he was greater or because he was louder? As the war progressed, criticism followed Omar Bradley closely. Historians and armchair analysts alike point to the Falaise Gap, arguing Bradley moved too cautiously and missed a chance to annihilate the retreating German army. To them, hesitation cost a decisive victory. The counter-argument is equally strong. Bradley prioritized coalition unity, secure supply lines, and long-term sustainability over dramatic encirclements. He believed wars were not won by spectacle, but by ensuring momentum could be maintained without collapse. This debate cuts to the heart of command: speed versus sustainability, glory versus responsibility. Bradley chose restraint in moments others demanded boldness. So the question remains, was caution a costly mistake, or the very reason the Allies ultimately won? As the Allies pushed into late 1944, the Ardennes offensive highlighted once again George Patton's brilliance. His armored divisions moved with speed and precision, turning the tide in moments of crisis. Yet even in these displays of genius, Omar Bradley remained the steady hand behind the scenes. Bradley acted as both a political and strategic buffer, ensuring Patton's aggressive maneuvers aligned with broader Allied objectives and avoided unnecessary risk. Privately, Bradley respected Patton's talent, even when he disagreed with his methods. Publicly, the contrast was clear. Patton thrived in the spotlight, brash and commanding, while Bradley maintained measured composure, often unseen. Patton resented the restraint imposed upon him, but it was a restraint that ultimately preserved his effectiveness and safeguarded the Allied strategy. Historians generally agree that neither man could have succeeded alone. Patton's audacity needed Bradley's caution, and Bradley's steady hand required Patton's energy to achieve decisive victories. Their uneasy partnership was not just a battle of personalities, it was a dynamic essential to the Allied success in Europe. So, here's the question for viewers. Could Patton have survived World War II command without Bradley's guidance? Share your thoughts in the comments and join the discussion. When it comes to legacy, George Patton and Omar Bradley occupy very different spaces in history and popular culture. Patton's flamboyance, charisma, and daring battlefield maneuvers have made him a legend. Movies, speeches, and wartime anecdotes have immortalized him as the embodiment of American aggression and heroism. His boldness commands attention, making him the face of U.S. armored power in World War II. Bradley, by contrast, operated in the shadows. Academic historians increasingly recognize his strategic brilliance, his ability to coordinate complex operations, and his skill at managing alliances and logistics. Yet in popular memory, he is far less celebrated. Online comment sections overflow with admiration for Patton's audacity, while Bradley is often relegated to footnotes, cited for his planning rather than his flair. This disparity sparks fascinating debates among history enthusiasts today. Some argue that Bradley's understated approach was more essential to Allied victory than Patton's headline-grabbing exploits. Others claim that without Patton's audacity, Bradley's careful planning could never have been fully realized. So here's a question for you. If Bradley had Patton's personality, would history remember him differently? Share your thoughts in the comments and join the debate. Omar Bradley's true challenge in World War II was not simply winning battles, it was winning, with George Patton at his side, without letting the fiery general's temperament derail the war effort. Patton's audacity could achieve spectacular victories, but it also carried enormous risks. Bradley's genius lay in managing that volatility, channeling Patton's energy while maintaining strategic discipline. In many ways, Bradley's victories were victories of control, patience, and foresight, qualities that rarely make headlines but are essential in war. History often celebrates the bold and the loud. Patton's speeches, exploits, and aggressive maneuvers have earned him a permanent place in popular imagination. Bradley, in contrast, remains the quiet architect, the unseen hand ensuring that brilliance was harnessed effectively. Without Bradley's steady leadership, Patton's genius might have become a liability rather than a force multiplier. This is a lesson in the nature of command. The most important generals are not always the most visible. Sometimes, the silent strategist behind the spotlight determines the outcome of history itself. For viewers, who mattered more to Allied victory, Patton's aggression or Bradley's control? Defend your answer in the comments and join the discussion.